Hello and welcome! It's been a while, hasn't it? A lot of things have been changing in my life recently. We left the UK and we moved back to Bulgaria. We moved into a new flat. I found a new job in a field that's completely unrelated to my educational background. A job in marketing. I know. But I really needed a change. Now, I will tell you all about that in another video. For now, get comfortable because we have a lot of books to get through. Now we are starting with Kindred Spirits of Harling. Now this was an arc, and it's about a single mom that can see and speak with ghosts. She takes her daughter to a little village in the Cotswolds. As the story unfolds and things begin to happen, the daughter and the mom move into the estate of the owner of the village, and they essentially buy that estate for like a very minimum small sum, because as a rule the owner of the estate must be able to see all of the ghosts in the village, and unfortunately that magical ability hasn't been passed down to the grandson of the owner of the estate, and so now that they have found someone who has that ability, they have to sell the estate to that person. Hence the random woman with a child that just sort of gets an estate that's worth millions of pounds for like 5 quid. Yeah, so there is also a love story in this book, but I have to say I really couldn't care less about the love story. The only thing that was really driving me to read this book was actually the ghosts, because I found that they were the most interesting part of the story, and like meeting the different types of ghosts and speaking to them and finding out about who they are, what beef they have with other ghosts, and so on and so forth. The story started off good and cozy, and I think it is a good read for people who just kind of want to shut their brain off and relax. The problem is that it got frustrating very quickly, at least for me, mainly because the characters were rather inconsistent, and especially the main love interest, the dude. His character kind of changed based on the scene that the author wanted to write, and he didn't really have a set personality. Also, for some reason, every main character seems to be rather stupid, apart from the little girl who's 11.
How'd you get to be so smart?
I read a lot.
Just when I thought we could be friends.
And also nothing really happened in this book. The only thing that was really driving the plot were the ghosts. But again, all we did was talk to them and get to know them and nothing else. And that's the thing, we were introduced to so many characters, but their introduction literally went nowhere. Plot-wise. Also, I will never understand how people can fall in love in like a month. And even though I took notes, I can't possibly remember all of my comments about this book, so I will just briefly read a part of my Goodreads review, okay? Because I think that was a very big point for me. It felt less like meaningful character development and more like a filler arc. Combine that with endless miscommunication and a frustrating level of stubbornness from literally every character, and this story could have been at least 100 pages shorter with no real loss. Kindred Spirits of Harling gets a 3 out of 5. Next up, we have Arcana Academy, or Arcana Academy, not sure how it's pronounced. Anyway, this book I rather enjoyed, specifically because of the magic system, because it felt rather unique and I haven't read anything like it before. It's basically about a girl that attends a magical school where they wield tarot cards, and she pretty much ends up falling in love with the headmaster, who, I know that it sounds like there's going to be a very big age gap, there isn't. Somehow he's the headmaster and he's like early 20s. I think he's in his early 20s, not sure. But yeah, she's trying to find her missing sister, there's some drama, and by drama I mean political drama. It's kind of trying to be dark. It didn't really feel dark. The world building was sort of okay, it was sort of intricate, mainly because of the magic system, but by itself, If you subtract the magic system, I think it was really lacking, mainly because we spent so much time on descriptions of clothing, which I haven't encountered a lot. But we were so focused on what people were wearing that I think at some point it was all just about the word count. I don't know, I just know that I for sure don't need so much descriptions of clothes. The academy itself, I think, is built very well, and because of the writing style of the author, you do kind of get absorbed into it, which I think just for that writing style it gets an extra star, and for the magic system it gets another extra star. I also really don't like it when something is repeated to the reader constantly. Specifically in this case about the family drama around the main character, because we got reminded of what has happened in the past and how she feels about it so many times that it kind of felt like the author couldn't trust us to remember. With regards to the main characters, the dude was inconsistent, and I felt like the power balance was off, or like there wasn't a clear power balance. And he's presented as this very intelligent person, but then he makes rather stupid decisions. And honestly, there was a part in the book where you could see that he had one job. Like, he had one job for the success of a plan, and he just fumbled it completely. You had one job, dude. And when it comes to the girl, honestly, she's supposed to be 20-something. She's supposed to have gone through these very traumatic experiences in her life. But then she just ends up sounding like an edgy teenager. And this book is 500 pages long and you're stuck in her head. And honestly, I'm not very eager to go through this again. And yes, the magic system is very intricate and I enjoyed it. But also, let's not pretend that most of us probably read this book until the end because we kept waiting for the two main characters to do it. Will I read the second book when it comes out? I don't know. I'm on the fence. But again, because of the way the world was built, specifically the academy, and because of the magic system, I give this book a 4 out of 5. Next up, we have another arc, which was Dragonheart. Now, I DNF'd this at 40%. I didn't even get to the dragons. I don't remember anything about this, even in my notes. All it says is absolutely nothing about this book stands out. Same old edgy, arrogant, stubborn, dumb, very powerful, and just outright obnoxious female assassin. That's it. That's all I have to say, I guess. I DNF'd it. That's it. This one is going to be controversial. I bet it will be controversial. I bet a lot of people will hop on here and tell me how I didn't understand the book. Especially because this review is kind of mixed in between all of the romantasy and fantasy and whatnot. And I'm 100% expecting people, especially men, to go on and say that I should just go back to reading superficial romantasy and not, I don't know, partake in discussions of higher literature. This is how much people love this book. And I was just not that impressed. Maybe impressed is not the word. Anyway, you will hear my thoughts about it in a second, but next up we have Blood Meridian. So let's start with the writing style. Yes, it is unique, but to me it felt so monotonous and so dry. And yes, there were some pretty beautiful descriptions of scenery, but then that would kind of get lost in between all of the monotony. And that's the thing, it's the prose that really put me off, because it was so descriptive in such a dry way. And I am used to reading very descriptive works. I am fine in general with very descriptive works, as long as they're not dry. And because it was so dry, I felt absolutely nothing reading this, except frustration. And frustration mainly because of the missing punctuation. The lack of punctuation was driving me insane. And no, I'm sorry, but to me, it did not feel like truly smart and unique. It felt more like, oh, look at me, I'm different. I read somewhere that the author said that if you're a good writer, you don't need to use punctuation or something of that sort. I'm sorry, but the moment I heard that, immediately I thought, this is way too pretentious. Also because of the way the story is being told, I didn't care about the violence at all. I just kept thinking, okay, but why should I care? Yes, war, yes, death, yes, violence, yes, cruelty. Okay, but it's not like I haven't read about those stuff before extensively in other fictional works. Nothing in the description of these scenes really stood out to me. And there are definitely other fictional works that I think go way more deeply into the human psyche and why people do the violent, ugly, and disgusting things that they do. This book, on the other hand, just shows us scenes of violence. It shows us the actions, and we are just the observers. And people say, yes, that's the point. That's what the author wanted. And then I say, okay, but I don't like it. I don't feel anything. And then people say, well, again, that's the point, because these people get desensitized and they don't feel anything while they do it. But then maybe I was expecting too much. I was expecting this to feel groundbreaking because of all of the praise, because it was recommended to me by someone whose opinion I value a lot. And then I didn't get that. I got absolutely no emotions while reading this. And I had to push myself to keep reading and get to the end, because I honestly didn't care about what was going to happen. Because let's be honest, most of the time nothing actually happens apart from the violence. And I think maybe another issue is that I, as a reader, need to be able to connect to a character on a deeper level, to kind of be in the character's head, to see what they're thinking. And with this book, I don't get that. And sometimes, yes, we do get some preachy justifications of what's happening. And most of the time, I found those preachy justifications the most interesting part of the book. And generally, I just felt like I was watching a very slow-paced old Western movie where nothing really happens. And yes, I guess we are supposed to interpret the book through our own experiences and our own perspective and views and knowledge, and then make our own connections. And I guess that's why people get very divided over this book, because at the end of the day, we all look at literature through our own perspectives. And my life and my understanding of life and morals just doesn't resonate with this book. And maybe there is something to say about us being desensitized to violence, because now we see it constantly through media, through TV shows and social media, all of the horror movies and gore and documentaries about serial killers and war. And maybe back when the book was published, there wasn't that much exposure to such very violent scenes. And for its time, maybe that depiction of violence was in itself something more unique and more different, something that wasn't showed to a lot of people or described to a lot of people. And in that sense, I get why the book is so praised. However, I don't really see Blood Meridian as an interesting or deep examination or portrayal of human nature. And I know a lot of people say that this is a difficult book to read, right? But I wouldn't really say it's difficult. I would say it's different from the mass. And if anything makes it difficult to read, it is the rejection of basic English punctuation. Now, I did kind of enjoy noticing the Bible references, Moby Dick, Odyssey, and sometimes I would kind of read past them and then I would go like, oh wait a minute, was that a reference? And I would go back, and that was interesting for me. That's another thing that kept me reading the book, because I wanted to see if I would clock any other references. And I have to say that as an atheist, reading all of the Bible stuff and references to God and reading the preachiness of the judge was a rather interesting, let's say, study of how religion could be, and it has been twisted to fit people's needs and to justify lots and lots of violence. And I have to admit, it has been a while since I have taken so many notes about a book. Now, with all of that said, I have probably missed some point. I'm sure I've missed some point. It has also been like 3 months since I read this, but overall, Blood Meridian gets a 3 out of 5. We are moving on to Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Now, this is, as far as I remember, his first book. And I would say, judging by the way it's written, you can definitely tell that it's not as polished as his other works. I have to say, I really struggle with summarizing fantasy books, specifically this type of more high fantasy books, because, you know, generally the plot is more complicated, the magic system is more complicated. So if you want to know what it's about, just Google it. Please don't make me struggle through this. I have to admit that in the beginning I did feel a little bit thrown off by how unpolished Elantris feels compared to the rest of the Cosmere, and specifically the Stormlight Archive. But once I got past that and I kind of stopped comparing, I really enjoyed it. And while in the beginning I was thinking of giving this a 3, once I finished the book, I'm definitely giving it a 4 out of 5. One of the things that really stands out in Brandon Sanderson's stories is the way he talks about religion, the way he explores religion, the way he crafts new religions and manages to make them so realistic, I would say. And when you have characters who are experiencing doubts, right, and who are going through their own religious, whatever the word is for changing your mind about religion, whatever, they are just written so well. The whole discourse about religion in all of his books always gets stuck in my head. Next up, I read another arc, Clockwork Boys. Man, this book was an absolute delight. Okay, it was so funny, it was so entertaining, it was fast-paced, I love the characters, they all had their own strong individuality, right? And that's something I value a lot and I look for a lot in the books I read. This book is very dialogue heavy, but as you were reading the dialogues of different characters, you could tell which character was speaking just by the way their speech was written. And I don't mean like accents or whatever, I just mean the way that they structured their sentences and the expressions they used. That, for me, is really good characterization. The dialogue was very natural, the relationships felt rather natural as well, and the story itself was mainly driven by the dialogue and the characters, and the world building was very succinct but also very interesting. I might be a little bit biased because I always play a paladin, and one of the main characters in this story is a paladin, and it is so refreshing to read a story about a paladin who is not the stereotypical super righteous, lawful good and brooding. And it was also interesting to read a fantasy with a romance subplot that did not feel like it was being led by teenagers, but it was actually being led by grown-ups, and they felt like grown-ups. Like, the main characters are in their 30s and they actually have self-reflection skills and are rather self-aware. Unfortunately, I couldn't find physical copies of these books, and I really want a physical copy. Now, once again, I didn't tell you what the story is about. I don't think I can. So you have an assassin, a paladin, and a forger. And they go on a quest to a land where you have these magical machines that destroy everything in their way. And they have to find a way to stop these machines. That is basically the premise for the two books. I know it doesn't sound very interesting. I'm telling you, it's a really fun read. I still feel though like something is missing, so I can't give these a 5 out of 5, but I am definitely giving them a 4 out of 5. And I am most certainly going to read more from this author. Next up we have Six of Crows. Now I think that I would have enjoyed this more if I had read Shadow and Bone. I definitely don't think that you can read this as a standalone. I mean, you definitely can't read it as a standalone because it's a duology, I think, but it is very much also connected to the Shadow and Bone universe. Now, thankfully, I have watched the TV show, which I know a lot of people will say that it's different.
Blah, 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 blah.
But it did give me enough context to understand what's going on. Is the excuse of a trilogy existing before this book an excuse to have poor world building? No, it's not. I'm sorry, but this book really has poor world building. And yes, I'm sorry, this is probably going to stand out to you as I wave the book around because I do a lot of waving. I'm not sure what happened. I would assume that this is water damage. It is what it is. Now, I know that the general consensus is that the character building in this book is very strong. However, to me, it did not feel strong. Because to me, it just felt like the author was banking on all of the characters being edgy and mysterious and dark. All of them. And while they all have their own distinct backstories, they speak kind of the same way and they behave kind of the same way. Why? Because they all sound like they're trying to out-edgy themselves and like they're in a constant competition of who's going to be the most sarcastic. And that gets old very quickly. Now, the story behind this book is that you have a bunch of outlaws, outcasts, whatever, who have to do a heist at a high security prison. And while the concept of a heist sounds interesting, I really couldn't get into the book because there was nothing else happening besides the heist. And yes, we were getting these like little hints of character backstory and drama, and the author felt like she was trying to kind of put in there some little bits of extra stuff, but they all felt very superficial. It's like when you're playing a game and you're only doing the campaign quests and you're never doing the side quests. And we do also get the origin stories. So yes, we have origin stories and campaign, but no side quests, and that's just boring to me. Anyway, these 500 pages of campaign quests get a 3 out of 5. And I am not going to read the second one. I am very excited about this one, okay? Where is it? Okay, here we go. It's such a beautiful edition as well. Jane Eyre. Look at this beauty. Look at it. Isn't it stunning? It's absolutely stunning. Look at the way it opens. And with the little thingy thing. It just kind of stays. Well, almost stays. But yeah, it's so pretty. This was a gift from a friend. No, wait, it was not. Funny story. Sidetracking here. But my boyfriend and I, we went into a bookshop and I saw these new editions of some classic books. And he said that he was going to buy me one. And so I picked Jane Eyre. Now, these are like brand new editions, okay? They just came out. And my best friend had actually bought this for me and Wuthering Heights for a friend and the Falls of the House of Usher for herself. But then I sent a photo of this to the group chat and then she was like, no, what have you done? And so I got this from my boyfriend. She gave me the Fall of the House of Usher and I basically won in life. It's a very pretty edition, that one as well. Wait, sidetracking. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall. I'm gonna fall. Okay, got it. Ow, broken nail. Okay, the Fall of the House of Usher. Look at this beauty as well. Yeah, really pretty, side by side. I win in life, that's all I have to say. I still haven't read it. I love Edgar Allan Poe, he's one of my favorite writers, but anyway, moving along to Jane Eyre. Now, I don't really know what to say about this book, besides that it's absolutely amazing. I don't even know why I found it so interesting, but the writing style, wow, like Charlotte Bronte's writing style is so beautiful. It just kind of digs its nails into you and it doesn't let you go, because honestly, if it was written in any other way, if it was not written in such a beautiful English, I probably wouldn't have read it because it's not really the type of story that I care about. But this was so beautifully written. It's basically about an orphaned girl that's being treated very badly by the family that's taking care of her, and she is sent to an all-girls school where she studies and becomes a governess, and then she goes to this rich family and she's the governess there, and she falls in love with the lord of the estate, and there is drama. But it's a story about growth and self-discovery and confidence, and it's one of the first more feminist novels written. It's just beautiful, it's so emotional. I love it. 5 out of 5 for Jane Eyre. And then after Jane Eyre, for some reason, I picked up an arc called Digging Dr. Jones, which I DNF'd. That's all I have to say about it. Honestly, I'm a sucker for stuff like Indiana Jones and relic hunters, you know, it's a guilty pleasure. And I thought that this was going to be something like that, but with a romantic subplot, or major plot, more or less. But no, I'm sorry, I just couldn't. It was the definition of cringy writing. It's okay for some, it's not okay for me. I couldn't enjoy it at all. And especially because I read it right after reading Charlotte Bronte's writing style and prose, and it just felt so badly written. So I'm sorry, I DNF'd that one. And then I picked up another arc called The Norfolk Theatre Murders. Now, I will admit, I picked it up because it takes place in Norwich, and I have a very sentimental attachment to Norwich because I lived in Norfolk for about 2 years and I loved it there, and I have very fond memories of the Norfolk area and Norwich, and I wanted to feel that emotional connection a little bit, and so I thought that this book would give it to me. Now, unfortunately, it didn't. It is a murder mystery. Yes, it does take you kind of on a walk through Norwich, which was sweet, but that was about it. When it comes to the mystery itself, the story of the killer was just rather unconvincing, and the writing style was just very dry. And I was also expecting that we would get some actual, investigative work, but everything just kind of got served to the police constantly, and that was just poor storytelling to me. I'm sorry. 2 out of 5. Oh, now we have something more exciting for me. Holy Terrors, which is the final book in the Little Thieves series. Now, very briefly, our main girl is the goddaughter of Fortune and Death. She kind of always gets into very messy situations, which she pretty much just causes herself, and then she has to get herself out of those situations. The love interest is the investigator that was supposed to catch her, but of course that doesn't really happen because he is the love interest. There's lots of drama, there's lots of self-discovery, and my problem with the series, and specifically the last book, is that we just kind of go in circles a lot, specifically with the emotional drama. And I get that a character needs to have these moments of self-reflection and self-discovery and whatnot, but it gets a little bit too repetitive, you know? While I would say that the first 2 books had strong world building, I have to say that in this one, you could really tell that the magic system wasn't as well thought out. Like, there was no power balance, and the ending felt like an absolute mess with no proper explanation of how the powers worked and why things happened the way they happened. And this might be nitpicking, but I really could have gone without the line, "The power of friendship is not cheating." Holy Terrors gets a 4 out of 5, but I have to say that the series as a whole... See, I don't think I've given a single book in the series more than a 4. However, as a whole, I would still give the series a 5. Because as a series, it does feel complete. And while there are some elements that I didn't like, some things that I can nitpick, I did feel very excited about reading every book. And I do think that the storytelling was unique. So the Little Thieves series as a whole gets a 5 out of 5. Now we have Blood over Bright Haven. I was very curious about this book, and the reason I was so curious about it is because one of my friends picked it up, read it, and really liked it. Now here's the thing, she does not like fantasy, she doesn't read fantasy. So the fact that she enjoyed this one meant a lot to me, right? So I got very curious, and the moment I saw it, I had to buy it. Basically, the premise of this book is that we have a magical system that's pretty much magical coding. And of course, women are severely underrepresented, they're pretty much dismissed, you don't have any women working in high positions, and we follow our main girl that actually gets accepted into this very high position, and she's the first female to get accepted into that position. So we follow her experience at work, being the only woman, and also working with a representative of a specific people, nation, that are pretty much considered second-hand, and they're very oppressed. And he's her lab assistant. We do have a romance subplot, but it is a subplot, it's just not the main thing. The main story is about the oppression that the government is exerting upon these people and women, but mostly about these people, and how our main leads are trying to battle that oppression through magical coding. And I have to say, the magical system really is very unique. I haven't read anything like it before. It left an impression on me. I can definitely tell why my friend liked it so much. Now, the reason why I have some problems with this book is that it felt like the author was kind of hand-holding the reader through the discussions about the problems I mentioned. I mean, about feminism and racism and oppression. And it very much felt like the author was kind of trying to beat us over the head with the points she wanted to make. And I would have accepted it if this was a YA book, but it is tagged as an adult fantasy, so I was a bit disappointed. I also have to say the characters were very consistent, which is a rare find these days, so kudos for that, and kudos for writing really a standalone book, instead of hopping on the train of milking the cow and just pumping out more books for a series and trying to make a story that can fit in one book, fit into more than one book, okay? So really good job on that, and Blood over Bright Haven gets a 4 out of 5. Now we are going back to good old Brando, and I finally read Warbreaker. Now I was split on this, kind of the way I was split with Elantris. However, I did end up giving it a 4 out of 5. Again, what it's about, please Google it. Please Google it. It is a standalone book. You can read it as it is. But once you know it's connected to the Cosmere and then you start finding the connections, it definitely becomes more entertaining. I feel like I'm speeding through this. Okay, this is a good tempo. Next up, we have The Knight and the Moth. This was a very random purchase, like a really random purchase, because I was in the bookstore and I was wondering what to buy, and I thought I want to read something more dark. And I didn't even realize that this is by Rachel Gillig, which wrote One Dark Window, which was on my to-read list. I devoured this book. It's an interesting story with endearing characters. However, the ending kind of felt very predictable and definitely too cliche. There is no magic system. It all kind of swims in the pool of mysticism, which is generally fine, but it's just not my preferred world building. And speaking of the world building, there was no clarity on the scope of things, no clarity on distance and time passing, and maybe that goes in hand with the mysticism, but I'm just not a huge fan of that. It did take me a while to relax into the story because it doesn't really follow the stereotype of what oracles and knights are supposed to be and how they're supposed to act, and my mind kept battling with what I was expecting and what I was given, which is not a bad thing. I like the more different twist to the stereotype. So you have these girls that are diviners, and when they taste someone's blood and then they're dumped into a pool and they drown, they have visions. And you have the main lady, not main character lady, but the main leader who kind of interprets those. These diviners, they serve for 10 years and then they go out into the world. Now what starts happening is that these diviners start disappearing. And our main girl is kind of like, what's happening? Where are my girls? Where are my friends? I need help. And you have this knight that just kind of shows up with a delegation of a king and other knights, and they kind of have a vibe, and he helps her. And then they kind of go on investigating, trying to find the other girls, and that's the main storyline. And remember how I mentioned about standalone books when I was talking about Blood Over Bright Haven? Well, I think that this could have been a standalone book, but now it's just milking the cow, because I'm sure we could have had an ending. I'm sure we didn't have to milk the cow with this story, because the ending of the first book is just so you know? And I have to be honest, the gargoyle carried most of this book. Despite all of those points, I did enjoy this, and the prose is dreamy. And this gets a 4 out of 5. Okay, next up, I read White Sand, Volume 1 by Brandon Sanderson. Absolutely, White Sand is the weakest thing I've read of Brandon Sanderson, okay? Absolutely did not enjoy it, had to force myself to keep reading it. I will read Volume 2 and 3 at some point. It's not that it's bad per se, it's just that I would much rather have the story in a book format than have it as a, what do you call that? Graphic novel? Yeah, not a fan of that. I mean, I'm generally a fan of comic books, I'm a fan of graphic novels, but I was just not a fan of this story being a graphic novel. But the story itself is interesting, so I'm kind of split on this. I am giving it a 3 out of 5. Now next, I did read One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, because I really enjoyed The Knight and the Moth, and I thought that I might as well read the rest of Rachel Gillig's books because, you know, I like the writing style, and these were on my TBR, and they are rather famous as well. So, did I take notes on these two? No, I did not, because I really thought that I was going to film this earlier than I ended up filming it. But anyway, let's try and do this review by memory. I devoured One Dark Window as well. Stunning prose, haunting prose. Definitely goes into the gothic fantasy vibe, 100%. It does also have mysticism. It does have a more structured magical system than the Knight and the Moth, but the magical system is still crowded in mysticism. Loved the poetry. The characters were endearing. I actually ended up caring about all the main characters. A really good book, honestly. Here you also have the concept of tarot cards, kind of like you have it in Arcana Academy. However, these are like proper tarot cards. I don't know, like they're haunting, you know? I'm saying nothing. I'm literally saying nothing. Okay, summing up. Our main girl basically has a monster called the Nightmare living in her head. And he sometimes takes over her body, some stuff happen and he helps her. But as he's taking over her body, the more often he does it, the more likely she is. No, wait, I shouldn't be saying that. There is a solid romance plot in this, okay? It's not just a subplot. It is a solid plot point. Oh wait, no, I can't say that about the Nightmare. Okay, wait. The Nightmare is slowly, darkly taking over her mind, and she might not be able to stop him. It says so on the back, so it's not spoilers, okay? Before anyone scolds me. Ah, boyfriend is calling. Excuse me. I know. What was I saying? This is a mess. This is an absolute mess. I'm sorry. I'm tired. Honestly, work has been, I wouldn't say crazy, but just kind of adjusting to all of the changes that I mentioned in at the beginning of the video. It's taking a lot of energy out of me. Not that I have ever had any energy to begin with. Anyway, moving on. Fuck. No. So she is being taken over by the Nightmare. She meets this dude who is kind of from royalty who partners up with her so they can try and stop the mist that is spreading through the world that is infecting people and either killing them or giving them magic. But then if they get magic, they have to be killed, and so on and so on. 5 out of 5. I'm sorry, this gets a 5 out of 5. I love this book. But then we have book number 2, and it wasn't bad. I still read it quite quickly. The focus kind of shifts from the main couple to another couple, which is fine. I like that couple as well. I don't know, it felt like something was definitely missing from this book, and Two Twisted Crowns gets a 4 out of 5. But in general, the whole duology, very good. Very, very good. You know, we have 2 more to go and then we're done. We have Finders Keepers by Stephen King, which was the second book of the Bill Hodges series. Honestly, I was really disappointed because I really, really like Mr. Mercedes. But with this one, I don't know, there was no tension, like no suspense. What happens in this book is that in 1978 we have a guy that kills his favorite author because he believes the author did a disservice to the protagonist of the books he was writing, and he kind of wanted to punish him for that, so he kills him and he steals the handwritten manuscript of what the dude assumes is a sequel, and he wants to read it and know what happens next, but it's unpublished, right? However, he also kills the other men that were with him that night and helped him with the robbery. And then he goes and speaks to like a book collector to see if he can sell the manuscript and stuff like that. And he gets angry and then he gets drunk, and when he gets drunk he kind of blackouts and does some really dumb shit. And he gets drunk and he does something really, really bad and he ends up in prison. Not for the murders, no. For the other thing that he did. No one knows that he committed those murders. No one knows that he stole the manuscript. But before he did the blackout thingy, he buried the manuscript and some money in a trunk, suitcase type of thing, close to where he lived. And then he goes to prison and he never reads the manuscript. Fast forward, we have another family living in that house, and we have the kid of that family, one of the kids, finding that trunk digging it out, taking out the money so he can help out his family, and reading the novels. And it turns out that there's, I think it was 2 novels in there. Fast forward a little bit more. The dude, the 1978 murderer, gets out of prison and now he wants to read the manuscript. And, you know, drama unfolds, he kills a bunch of people. Again, or at least he tries to. No, he killed how many? Never mind, that's spoilers. He does some bad stuff. And then Bill Hodges gets involved. That's literally the story. Not a bad book, of course, not a bad book. It was just disappointing compared to Mr. Mercedes. 3 out of 5. And we're ending with the last arc I tried to read and I utterly failed. A Dance of Lies. I DNF'd it. I'm sorry. I tried so hard. I really did. It was too slow. We were going in circles with, again, emotional drama. I think you can see that there's a pattern here of the things that I don't like. But yeah, I think I just summed up all the books I read for the past 4 months. Good. Good. What I'm reading now is The Shadow of What Was Lost. I'm reading so slowly now. That's what an office job does to you, doesn't it? It kind of slows down everything. You don't really have time to do the things that you could do before. Now it's completely different when you work from home, but when you have to go to the office... Anyway, now I have to put this big pile back. Where am I gonna... Okay. Anyway, so I will organize these back into the rightful places. And thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble. It's been a while. We'll see how often I can upload under these working conditions. But I hope that soon I will kind of get into a routine, and then I will start finding more time to do these videos and to read more, because I miss reading so much. Anyway, after The Shadow of What Was Lost, I will be reading Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil, and we'll see from there, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching again. I hope you've been well for the past few months. I hope that you're having a lovely summer, as always. Any comments and recommendations are welcome. I have a shelf on Goodreads where I record all of your recommendations, and now I am even slower at getting through them. But I will get through them at some point, right? As long as there is a will, there is a way, as they say. If you have read any of the books I've mentioned, please feel free to leave your own review, comment on my review, whatever it is. And I will see you again in the next one. Thank you for watching. Bye bye.